Hello everyone, welcome to today's story. The aroma of freshly ground coffee lingered in the air as Lytuna stood before the mirror. Her hands trembled slightly, though she tried to steady them by clasping one over the other. In her reflection, she saw a woman both hopeful and afraid. A quiet storm beneath the calm surface. The morning light brushed against her simple dress, soft beige fabric swaying lightly with her breath. She had chosen it carefully, not to impress, but to be accepted. Today, she would meet Alex's father. Outside the window, the city moved at its own rhythm, unaware of the fragile heartbeat of a woman preparing to step into a world that was not hers. From the doorway, Alex watched her with a gentle smile. His voice carried warmth as he said, "Don't worry. My father may seem cold, but deep down he's a just man." She nodded, though her heart whispered otherwise. Every story begins with a hope, and hers was that love might be enough. But somewhere deep down, even hope trembled at the edge of reality. Don't forget to like and subscribe. The truth is just beginning to unfold. The car stopped before a mansion that seemed carved out of pride itself. Marble pillars rose like frozen giants, guarding a garden too perfect to feel alive. As Lytuna stepped out, the air smelled faintly of rain, the kind that arrives before a storm, quiet but certain. Alex took her hand. His grip was warm, grounding. She whispered to herself, "You can do this," but her voice was smaller than the silence that surrounded them. Inside, every corner gleamed. Chandeliers shimmered with cold light, and Mr. Richard sat at the far end of the dining table, an emblem of power wrapped in composure. His eyes, sharp yet calm, measured her without speaking. "So, you are Lytuna," he said finally. No smile, no warmth, just a statement that felt like a test. She bowed slightly. "It's an honor to meet you, sir." Throughout dinner, she tried to speak gently, about small things, safe topics. Alex looked at her with pride, but Richard remained distant, every bite slow and deliberate, as though he were dissecting her with silence. When the plates were cleared, the air thickened. The ticking clock echoed louder than breath. Then Richard spoke. "Alex, you're free to love whoever you want, but she," his gaze fell on Lytuna like frost, "will never be my daughter-in-law." The words landed like glass breaking on marble. Alex rose, his voice trembling with anger. "Father, you can't speak to her like that. She's the woman I love." But Richard's calm never wavered. "Love is not enough, son. One day you'll understand." Lytuna's chest tightened. She wanted to disappear, not from shame, but from the weight of being the reason for their pain. She stood, bowed once more, and whispered, "Thank you for dinner. It was a pleasure to meet you." Her voice was steady, but inside, something cracked. Alex tried to stop her, but she smiled, a sad, tired smile that said everything she couldn't. "Let it go, Alex. Sometimes love takes more than courage. It takes acceptance." Outside, the night had fallen. The city glistened under light rain, each drop catching the glow of passing cars. Her footsteps echoed against wet pavement, fragile but firm, the sound of dignity retreating into heartbreak. In that silence, her thoughts repeated the words she wished she'd never heard. "She will not be my daughter-in-law." And in that echo she realized, love, no matter how deep, cannot always break the walls built by pride. Rain fell harder that night, not in anger, but in grief. Lytuna sat alone on her couch, her heels abandoned near the door. The city outside blurred behind streaks of water running down the glass. She had tried to hold herself together, to be composed in front of them. But here, in the quiet of her apartment, she let the tears fall freely. Meanwhile, Alex drove through the storm, headlights slicing through curtains of rain. His heart pounded against the silence his father had left behind. Why? He shouted into the empty car. Why judge her without knowing her? Back at the mansion, Richard poured himself another glass of wine, unshaken. "Because I see what you cannot see," he said when Alex burst through the door. "She does not belong in our world." "Love isn't measured by family names," Alex shouted, slamming his fist on the table. "She makes me a better man." Richard turned away, sighing. Love blinds, Alex, and when you open your eyes, it will be too late. Alex said nothing. He just took his jacket and stepped back into the storm. His reflection flashed in puddles, fractured by raindrops. He didn't know if he was running toward Lytuna or away from the weight of his own last name. When she opened the door, her eyes were swollen, her voice soft. "Alex, you shouldn't be here." "I don't care," he said, trembling. "I can't lose you." She looked down, avoiding his arms. "It's not just your father, Alex. It's his whole world. I don't want to be the reason you lose everything." He took her hands. "I don't care what he says. All I know is that I love you." Lytuna closed her eyes. A tear rolled down her cheek. "Love shouldn't make us choose," she whispered. "But sometimes, loving means knowing when to leave." Her words were soft, but they cut deeper than any rejection. She slipped her hands free, stepped back and whispered, "Give me time. I need to understand if our love can survive so much pain." When the door closed, Alex was left standing in the rain. The world around him dissolved into the steady rhythm of water hitting concrete. Each drop felt like the sound of something breaking, not loudly, but forever. Days turned into weeks. Lytuna's apartment grew quiet. The aroma of cold coffee lingered in the air, and wilted flowers stood as silent witnesses to her confusion. She didn't answer Alex's messages, but what haunted her wasn't Richard's rejection. It was the image of Alex standing alone, defending her against his father. Meanwhile, Alex fought against the same silence. He waited outside her office, watched her walk past without meeting his eyes. Every step she took away from him felt like a choice, one she didn't want to make, but had to. And then, one afternoon, his father called him in. The air in the office was thick, the scent of tobacco heavy. "You've changed since you met her," Richard said quietly. "You no longer think with your head, but with your heart. That is a weakness." Alex smiled faintly. "Maybe, but if loving her with all my heart makes me weak, then I never want to be strong." For the first time, Richard looked at his son, and in those eyes something flickered, a memory, long buried. That night, he opened an old wooden box and unfolded a yellowed letter. It was written by a woman he had once loved and lost, because he had chosen pride over her. As he read, his hands trembled. He saw himself in his son. He saw his past repeating. The man who believed in control felt his heart loosen for the first time. Outside, thunder rolled. Somewhere in the distance, the rain began again. And at that moment, everything changed. The next morning arrived in stillness. Richard sat in his study, eyes fixed on the letter he had unfolded the night before. Its paper yellowed, its words heavy with memory. "I waited, but pride arrived before love," it read. His chest ached. He could almost hear her voice again, the one he had silenced years ago in the name of family honor. For the first time in decades, Richard felt something shift within him, not weakness, but the weight of understanding. He rose, straightened his suit, and left the mansion. When Lytuna saw him at her workplace door, her heart nearly stopped. He looked older that day, not because of age, but because of humility. His voice was softer than she had ever imagined. "Miss Lytuna, I didn't come as a businessman or even as a father," he said. "I came as someone who has also loved and lost through fear. Don't make my mistake, my daughter." Lytuna's lips parted in disbelief. The words reached places no apology could touch. She nodded faintly, her eyes glistening. For the first time, she saw not a tyrant, but a man haunted by regret. That afternoon, the sky turned gray again. The air carried the scent of coming rain. Lytuna walked to the park where she and Alex used to meet, her steps uncertain yet drawn forward by something fragile, hope. The first drops fell as she reached the old path lined with maple trees. In the misty distance, a silhouette appeared, motionless, waiting. It was Alex. His clothes were soaked, but his eyes, tired, red, and shining, told stories words couldn't. When he saw her, he whispered her name. "Lytuna." She wanted to speak, but her voice broke. Instead, she ran, not away this time, but toward him. When they met, the rain erased everything, the pain, the pride, the distance. They clung to each other, trembling. "Forgive me," Alex murmured, pressing her head to his chest. "I didn't know how to protect you. I didn't know how to face all this without losing you both." She shook her head, tears mixing with rain. "You don't need forgiveness. I was the one who doubted, who thought of giving up. But now I know, true love doesn't run away, it endures." Alex looked at her, disbelief and awe in his eyes. "My father came to see you, didn't he?" She nodded slowly. He spoke from his heart. I think he finally understood. Alex's breath caught. Relief flickered through his exhaustion. "Then maybe I don't have to choose anymore, between my family and you." Lytuna smiled through her tears. "You never should have chosen, Alex. When love is true, it unites what pride divides." At that very moment, headlights cut through the rain. A black car stopped nearby. The door opened, and Richard stepped out, holding an umbrella. For a heartbeat, the world froze. Father, son, and the woman between them. Richard walked toward them, slow and deliberate. His face was serious, but his gaze had softened. He stopped before them, then quietly lifted the umbrella to cover all three. "You shouldn't get sick," he muttered. The rain pattered softly above their heads. Lytuna couldn't hold back anymore. Her tears flowed, not from sadness, but release. Alex reached out, took his father's hand. "Thank you, Father," he said, voice trembling. Richard sighed, eyes bright with unshed tears. "Don't thank me, just don't lose her. Life doesn't give many chances to love truly." In that fragile circle of rain and silence, three hearts, once divided, finally found each other again. The umbrella trembled slightly in the wind, but beneath it, warmth bloomed. Forgiveness, not words, had rewritten their fate. Weeks later, sunlight returned to the Richard family home, not harsh, but soft, like a promise whispered after a storm. The garden, once meticulously trimmed for perfection, now bloomed with wildflowers Lytuna had planted herself. They grew unevenly, freely, beautiful in their imperfection. Alex stood by the porch, watching her kneel among the roses. His father joined him, holding 2 cups of tea. For a moment, none of them spoke. The silence was no longer heavy, it was peace. Richard watched Lytuna with a faint smile. "You are stronger than I thought," he said quietly. "Thank you for not giving up on my son, or on me." Lytuna blushed, lowering her gaze. "I just listened to my heart," she replied softly, "and it always led me here." Alex reached for her hand. Their fingers intertwined effortlessly, as though they had been meant to find each other all along. Richard exhaled deeply, his eyes reflecting both fatigue and relief. "I used to believe love needed approval," he murmured, almost to himself. "Now I know it only needs understanding." A breeze drifted through the garden, carrying the scent of wet earth and new beginnings. The leaves rustled like quiet applause from the world itself. Lytuna looked up at the sky, its blue endless and forgiving. The sunlight touched her face, gentle as a hand. "Sometimes," she whispered, "love triumphs not through strength but through patience." Alex turned toward her, smiling. There were no grand declarations, no dramatic endings, just shared breath, warmth, and peace. Richard watched them from the shade, his heart lighter than it had been in years. Somewhere deep inside, he felt the echo of a love he had once lost, and the peace of knowing that this time, love had been allowed to stay. As the afternoon light deepened, the world seemed to slow. The sound of laughter replaced the memory of rain. And in that quiet, an invisible truth settled over them, that love, when forgiven, becomes something unbreakable. Not every battle is fought with anger. Some are won by simply choosing to stay, to listen, to understand. Maybe that was what Richard had finally learned, that pride builds walls, but love, with enough patience, finds a way to bloom even through stone. Maybe love doesn't end. It just changes shape, from defiance to forgiveness to peace.
Tử Na, cô cái bình dị đối mặt với sự từ chối lạnh lùng từ cha của Alex, người cho rằng cô không thuộc về thế giới của họ. Trong mưa, cô rời đi mang theo trái tim tan vỡ, nhưng tình yêu không dừng ở lại đó. Alex chống lại định kiến, còn Richard qua một bức thư của mối tình cũ nhận ra mình đã lặp lại bi kịch xưa. Ông tìm đến Tử Na xin lỗi và chấp nhận tình yêu của họ dưới cơn mưa. Ba con người từng bị tổn thương gặp lại nhau, tha thứ cho nhau, và khi bình minh trở lại, họ hiểu rằng tình yêu thực sự không cần phải thắng, chỉ cần thấu hiểu.